Ladies and gentlemen, in this lesson we would like to explain a bit what are clusters all about. No worries, it will be a short introduction, but I would like to point out what are the typical characteristics. So, what are clusters all about? Let's lift this secret a bit. So, very typical for clusters is a certain kind of region. Let's take this region as an idea. So, what does this region contain? Companies all over. You can see also knowledge provider, which are very often embedded in clusters, but also research entities, because might be some of the companies would like to do some research. Since money matters, very often we have venture capitalists in or banks, so they do play an important role. And if these actors, as you can see here, all cooperate, companies with universities, with banks, and there's a community which interacts, that is the magic explanation of clusters. And they can even work beyond borders. We know that today global value chains are not just located, they are stretched about a broader area, so it's very often that cluster actors here cooperate with actors outside. For those who didn't catch everything, because sometimes it's a bit fast, let's just sum up what are characteristics for cluster. It's a proximity, as I mentioned. Everyone is located in a certain kind of boundary. It is very typical that we have a sectorial focus, ICT, automotive. So it's normally not a mixture of everything, but it's very, very sector specific. That is also important. Even knowledge institutions can be specialized in a sector. What is very important as well is critical mass. So a cluster is not just a corporation of 2 or 3 companies. Normally we have 30, 40, or sometimes if you look at Silicon Valley, there are thousands of companies. So that is very important as well. Very relevant is if these companies cooperate, they very often cooperate according to value chains. So cluster very often cover an entire value chain or at least a part. And finally, as I already mentioned, cooperation but also competition is a relevant topic. We have good evidence that even competitors cooperate in clusters when it comes to skill development, when it comes to access of finance. This might sound very easy so far, but I have to disappoint you. Clusters are much more complex, especially cooperation and how to benefit. And here you can see different kinds how you can benefit if you are embedded in a cluster. So let's start. Knowledge spillover. This is what I already told you and explained. If you cooperate as a company with universities, with knowledge providers, if you exchange views with other partners, and if you're open, you will exchange knowledge, you will learn from others. So a knowledge spillover is a very typical effect if you are embedded in a cluster. As I already said, distance matters. It's a big difference whether you go around the corner to meet some partners or whether you have to travel. So that is also very important why distance really matters, which is one of the biggest effects. Exchange of employers. That is very relevant. Sometimes you don't need employees for a certain period, but your neighbor need. Why not to exchange expensive competences, for example? So that is something which is relevant as well. Social factors. We always know there's a spirit of Silicon Valley. It's just community building. You work together. You trust each other. So that is something which is very relevant as well. Personal relationship, which comes a bit from knowledge spillover. Connections matter. This is not connected just to clusters, it's connected to the business world. So if you have personal relationships, then it is much easier to cooperate because you know the person as well. So not to forget is the topic of innovation, joint product development, joint technology, all these cooperation which might be a result from personal connections, from community is very often very characteristic and complement to the topic of personal relationship is an informal relationship. You just call someone, you get some information before they become official, which is very important for companies in the globalized world where speed really matters. But also, as I already indicated, cooperation with institutions, companies, knowledge providers, banks. So these different cross-sectoral cooperation between different entities matters as well. So all these benefits can be created in a lively cluster, but companies also really have to contribute, because that is not coming from out of the blue. So that means that you have to cooperate intensively within a cluster. So I hope that these 5 minutes gave you a short introduction what is clustering all about. Thank you so much.